Hi, SAU students. How are you today? We're doing this a little bit differently for week 3 because of the snowstorm that we had. We had to cancel class. So I still want to get the information out to you, so I'm going to bring the lesson to you in 2 pieces, Part A and Part B, that are going to be distributed through Blackboard. So you should get it that way. So I'm going to do Part A right now, and then I'll chase it with Part B. So you put them together, you can watch them both and have at least a good snippet of what tonight's lesson's about and what we were going to do in class. So we're going to look at this week's course objectives. What we want to look at for the next few minutes are right out of the syllabus, but again, it's relationship between culture and performance, and that's out of Chapter 12, out of the Organizational Culture and Climate book, the OCC book as I call it. We're going to look at transformational leadership and organizational culture, again out of the same OCC book, Chapter 13, and then we're going to look at the political landscapes and their crossover with adaptive leadership, and that's out of the Practices of Adaptive Leadership book, out of Chapter 6. The thing you might notice with all this reading, well, the thing that confused me with all this reading, I should say, is how does it all fit together? All these chapters we're reading this week, including from the Adaptive Leadership book. So I thought it would be helpful for you. As I read through the chapters and kind of try to glue it together, this is what I came up with. So you can see the framework for this week's reading is it does kind of all work together actually. To the far right, what we're talking about overall is effective and performing organizations. And there are 2 items that impact that. That's culture and climate. We've been talking about the last number of weeks. Specifically though, culture in Chapter 12 of the OCC book. That's the Organizational Culture and Climate course text. And then climate out of that same book, Chapter 14. So chapters 12 and 14, culture and climate respectively, fit together with this impact the effectiveness and performance of organizations. Take a look at culture. So Chapter 13 in the OCC book is all about the different kinds of leadership styles, or 2 that are studied, transformational and transactional style. And we've heard those terms before in other courses in this MML program. It comes up again. So there are advantages and disadvantages to transformational and transactional leadership as it impacts the culture, and that's what Chapter 13 is about in the OCC book. In that Practice of Adaptive Leadership book in Chapter 6, it talks about the political climate in an organization. Now, we're not talking about politics here and government politics and state politics. We're not talking Republicans and Democrats and that sort of thing. We're talking about in the organization, in the business where you work, where you do life every day, there is politics going on around you, and I'm sure most of you are aware of that. So that Chapter 6 talks about how does those kinds of politics impact the culture at work. So let's talk for a minute first about the political landscapes and the adaptive leadership and what impact that has on the culture. This chart looks busy. I meant for it to pop up a little bit at a time during the actual PowerPoint presentation, but I'm going to have to show it to you all at once for the sake of simplicity and try to walk you through it. So really quickly, this framework that I put in front of you is based on a couple of different texts that I have, research-based texts. Some of it is from school-related and some of it is business-related or industry-related kinds of research, but I think you'll get the point here. So to the far left, again, I want to make sure you're thinking, don't think Republican, Democrat. Think about inside the 4 walls of your building, okay, where you work, or the organizations you work for. There are different constituents, and that's represented to those groups of people on the far left. I show 3. You probably have 4 or 5 multiple constituent groups. They have expectations. And for those groups, there's oftentimes a manager, supervisor, self-proclaimed leader, if you will, somebody who stands out as representing the expectations of that particular group. So you can see that's the representation of the folks in the middle there, the single people that are in the middle. Well, guess what? Those people, while they are constituents, they have constituents, and they are expected to uphold the values of those groups, those expectations of the groups. they also, as individuals, those folks in the middle there, they also have their own values. And sometimes there's a clash right there. But nonetheless, those are representatives of those constituencies, and they're expected to uphold the constituency's values, even if they're up against their own personal values. Well, now we come to that box of polity. Okay, polity, in real simple terms, is just the fight, the power over whose values are going to win. So polity is all about fighting for values. So in that little box, there's a lot going on about power and influence, positional power, influential power, etc., and whose values are going to win. Well, on the outside of the polity battle is this thing. It's usually negotiated. They become shared values. Okay, oftentimes not any one person's values going in, but it's a shared value, negotiated values. Okay, now that should spark something in your head. That's the definition of culture. I put it right there from a week ago. Enduring and shared values, shared norms, learned knowledge structures. That's the definition of culture, okay? So this political environment does impact the shared values. Take a look at this slide. These are from the Adaptive Leadership book. It says, according to that book, what can we do to understand the political climate in our organization? We can uncover values driving behavior. We can acknowledge that there are loyalties going on inside of our organization, that people want to align with certain values or change values. There are losses that people are going to experience as they navigate through and sacrifice some of their values to gain what they want to get. All right. So losses, and understand what those losses are when you're thinking about the political environment that in your organization, and realize that there are hidden alliances, and sometimes they're not so hidden, right? And this is the question I wanted to park on. I want you to think about this. This is right out of the book, page 98, out of that Practice of Adaptive Leadership book. How do you identify and generate hidden alliances to lead adaptive change? Now, here's my problem with that question. I get the identifying part of the hidden alliances to lead adaptive change because I want to know what's going on around me. I'm concerned about that word generate hidden alliances. Like, it makes me think the book is promoting that you jump in and not just understand that there's a political game being played, but now that you have to be a part of it. And I'm just pushing back a little bit on that. I don't know that you have to be a part of it. You have to know it's being played, and you have to understand where you fit in. But I don't know. Interested in your thoughts on that? We can talk about it when we come back in the new year, when we see you again, or when we see each other again. But anyways, how do you identify and then generate, and that's the question I've got, hidden alliances to lead adaptive change? Okay, this is the end of part A. Look for part B.